This review has been highly requested and savagely delayed, so I'm not going to delay it or postpone it any further by a long drawn-out intro. Today we're going to unbox, test, and review the BigBigWon Rainbow 2 Pro. Quite a name. I wish I could say it's quite a controller. I mean, it's something, for sure. It's a gamepad.
This is your controller captain. We've reached 6,900 feet. Go ahead and start flicking the sticks and mollywopping the back paddles.
You don't like back paddles? How about those rear buttons?
We've tested almost 100 custom and premium controllers, and we're only at the beginning. You need a thumbstick guide or tutorial on how to overclock your controller?
Check out the controller playlist.
Bing bong.
Controller captain out.
A quick disclaimer for my audience, the Stallions and Stallionettes. BigBigWon attempted to send out this controller ages ago. I think it got lost in transit, or we stopped talking via email or something. It never arrived to me. I bought this one on Amazon in November of last year. It's been sitting in the closet. I've been promising to review it. It's happening here today, but this is kind of a mini disclaimer that BigBigWon did attempt to send one of these to me. Never arrived to me. I did buy this with my own hard-earned shekels on Amazon. Now you know.
Packaging included accessories on the BigBigWon Rainbow 2 Pro are virtually identical to the previous BigBigWon that I've reviewed on the channel. Not only with the theme color of orange, which I really like. Up until I was about 8 or 9 years old, that was my favorite color. And now it's tealish turquoise. I know those are two different colors and you don't give a shit about my favorite color. It's part of the video.
A funny thing I always point out is when a controller is only for PC and Switch, they call it a multi-platform controller, making you think, damn, it's going to work on Xbox, PlayStation, everything under the sun. Perhaps with the use of converters or adapters, which we'll be testing in this video. A few of the key notable features on the front: you have a 2.4 gigahertz dongle, Bluetooth connectivity. You're going to have these foam rings protecting your thumbsticks in their travels, but that's about it. This controller is just shoved in there. There's no plastic housing holding it in place. The controller itself feels very nice. Not to jump ahead to the build quality section, but my goodness. Okay, there is a little plastic tray down there, but it's very low profile and I don't think really holds the controller in place very good. Your dongle's going to be in this baggie, and you have a short 1-foot rubber cable, not microfiber or braided, no Velcro tiebacks or dust covers on the A or C end, but this will work for charging. And if you want to go wired with this controller, you're probably going to, Jesus Christ, my hand is like super overexposed right now. What the fuck? There we go. Now it looks like I have a human hand again. But if you want to go wired, you're probably going to want to use your own cable, which, since this isn't proprietary or permanently affixed, you can use your own cable. The instruction manual is comically large. I can barely get it in frame. It's just, come on now. It's because it's a multinational controller. You've got all these languages in there. As for cosmetics or appearance, I've got to say this is one pretty slick looking controller. You have this smoked clear faceplate, which does hide a lot of the guts or internals, thinking that looks pretty good. What I do not like is going to be the multicolored face buttons. They look a little bit cheap, tacky, and like a parts bin special. Also, this little chip down here for the 3.5mm block, and also for your wireless headsets, this is going to be your audio control down here, profile swap modes, your turbo, basically your control center down here. Looks a little bit ugly with this chin or lip, in my personal opinion. The back looks weird as shit in my opinion, because you have this little niblet for the 3.5mm port, which I am glad that this controller has. I just reviewed the Apex 4 the other day, and that does not have a jack, so you'd have to jack yourself off if you want to use a headset, or move to the modern era with a wireless headset. Those 3 metal pads are going to drop into the optional charger dock for this controller, popping up on screen the listing for that bad boy. And then you do have a pretty comically large sticker in the back, which is going to have your regulatory information. But one useful thing that is on the back, you don't really see with very many controllers, is going to be a QR code, which will take you to a tutorial. Does it really? We'll find out right now.
When you scan that QR code, you are off to a good start because it's got multiple languages, one of which is English. It's not clever enough to take you directly to the actual controller, but just using my pinky, I can select it manually. Oh, golly, that's just the landing page showing me the controller that I already bought. Cool, show me all the key features of the controller that I already shopped for and ended up picking up through the sales funnel. How about you give me the goddamn instruction manual, you know what I mean?
But one thing I really love is you do have your on-the-fly shortcuts for how to swap modes, Windows, Android, iOS. We didn't even talk about how sweet it looks with that RGB coming through the faceplate. Very reminiscent of the T4 Khaled from GameSir. Actually almost identical with the placement of the RGB bar around the outside, but I think this looks a little bit better because you got that smoked faceplate. A little more classy because it diffuses the light, as where the T4 Khaled has the exposed bars winking you in the face.
As for ergonomics or comfort, it's pretty goddamn atrocious. These looks like the dimensions, shape, and shell design of an Xbox controller. However, it is not. Because of this entire section, which cuts in pretty far, these 3 fingers are going to be extremely cramped, and if you have medium to larger size hands, it doesn't really give you a very comfortable grip on the controller, as your pinky's kind of sliding off the bottom. Also, your middle finger is cocked at somewhat of a weird angle, which which extends onto these rear buttons, which also are angled at an awkward angle. Angled at an awkward angle. The geometry's off, boys. The rubber grips do feel nice. They're a little bit on the harder side, which means they should be a little bit more durable in the long term. My complaints aren't really with the rubber or the surface plastics making contact with your hand, but just the ergonomic shape of holding this controller. You can see my hand's kind of like, these three fingers don't even know where they are right now. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 3 out of 10. This is not a gamepad I'll be picking up much after this review. As for perceived build quality, this is in another league from the previous BigBigWon controller, which I reviewed about 2.5 years ago. This feels a lot more tight, button down, secure. Dpad, face buttons, analog sticks, everything feels quite secure. There's no major panel gaps where the front faceplate and these rubber grips meet. And if you do have an issue, teardown or disassembly would be quite easy because there is 4 Phillips or cross-tip screws right there. Oh, make that 6. There's 2 Mo right there. And there might be another one underneath that sticker. Make sure you check for that. I'm gonna give perceived build quality a 7 out of 10. Repeat, a 7 out of the 10. The D-pad I really wanted to like. It's tactile, it's clicky, it's mechanical. However, it is extremely floaty. It feels like it's on a weird pivot or swivel mechanism, which this one feels incredibly mushy, not secure, and you also get so many false actuations that you're hitting directions that you ought not to be hitting. Plus the surface plastics are incredibly slippery, and cosmetically it doesn't really tickle my corneas either. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 2 out of 10. That might be the lowest score I've ever given a D-pad. Go ahead and take a look in the mirror because we're talking about the face. Buttons are action buttons, which are pretty sweet. I did say they look like a hot bag of Aster in the cosmetic section, and they sure do. These little parts bin special, hyper glossy, super rounded Xbox buttons are not my favorite thing in the world, but they are serviceable. They're typical membrane buttons, so there's a little rubber plunger mechanism under there. I will say they're a little bit louder than even a standard Xbox controller. Nah, maybe that's just a placebo effect. I'm just tripping. The acoustics in my ear canals are off. These are serviceable. These will get the job done, but they can get wedged in at any time because they're membrane switches, don't have a tap life cycle, and don't feel the best. I'm gonna go ahead and give them a 4 out of 10. Repeat, a 4 out of the 10. As for the accessory button suite, which is gonna be these pancakes, these 2 broken windows, this little camera guy, these 3 are incredibly mushy and have so much travel. They sink so far into that front shell, but they are in a good place to where you can easily hit them, so I have no real complaints there. I also do like this little turbo function button off to the side. It has an LED indicator light to let you know that you're in mapping mode or doing something to your controller. I do not like the looks or feel of this entire control module down here. Also, the clicks are a little bit loud, so if you're using this next to a spouse that's passed out or something. Good morning, sweetheart. I'm gonna go ahead and give the accessory button suite a 5 out of 10. No, knock it down, sweetheart. A 4 out of 10. Where this controller falls on us to knock you a little bit is going to be the fact that these thumbsticks are Alps potentiometer thumbsticks. Now, Alps is kind of the, not golden standard. They are the most common by far, but while Alps are the most common, they are certainly not the best potentiometer thumbsticks. When I think of good potentiometers, I think of things like the NGL mini sticks from Thrustmaster, or this one, or that one. But right on the Amazon listing page, it does say Hall effect, gotta wait for it, triggers, and then Alps potentiometer joysticks. But they do feel pretty smooth, nice anti-friction rings, so you're gonna glide along smooth plastic when you're at full lock. Clicking down L3 and R3 feels tight and secure, not obnoxiously loud. These thumbstick caps, they do pop off, but you do not have any included thumbstick cap options included. There is an additional kit that you can pick up yourself on Amazon, popping up on screen the price of that little bad boy. But these stock joints are incredibly grippy. In fact, these are probably one of my favorite stock thumbstick caps. Not only the shape, size, but also this rubber or silicone compound. Very grippy. Let's take them to the PC, to GPT, for a little test for you and me.
Over here wired with the BigBigWon Rainbow 2 Pro. Doesn't get old. Might for you, not for me. You're seeing a very healthy resting value of 0.00002 on both the left and right analog sticks. They snap back perfectly every time. No weird inner or outer dead zones. Let's get a circularity test in, shall we, for good measure? Easily some of the best potentiometer thumbstick modules that I've seen. Not only in gameplay on the intended console, the Switch, but also on the PlayStation and Xbox with the use of converters, and on the PC with the dongle. Performance-wise was great with the thumbsticks. Everything felt taut, responsive, snappy, and everything is reflected as it should be in GPT.
These bumpers are literally identical to an Xbox Series controller, so if you've seen my stock comparison between PlayStation and Xbox controllers, you can basically just transfer over my verdict from that section. But these are going to go ahead and be about a 6 out of 10 for me, as they're on a swivel or hinge mechanism, easier to hit with the meteor finger than with the tip. Also, these these have an interesting sound. I'm not gonna say I hate it, but I also don't love it either. And there is virtually no dots or stippling. There's these little diamonds, but they don't do shit, and that also doesn't extend to the slick portion either. I'm gonna go ahead and give the bumpers a 4 out of 10. As for the triggers, you do have trigger stops, which are just on off, not 3 ways. They do not become a mechanical digital mouse click. They're just a plastic bar that comes out and stops you from squeezing the trigger, overlaying some B-roll from a teardown or disassembly, showing you exactly what I'm talking about, how typical trigger locks work. And that's what you're getting here. I would say they cut out about 75% of your trigger pull, so 3/4. I'd like to see a little bit more to where they cut out about 90%. The biggest concern though is when they're off, the triggers don't have very much travel in comparison to a stock Xbox controller. So if you're trying to modulate the throttle and brake in a racing game, 3 out of 10 for the trigs. 3 out of 10. Before we jump into the rear inputs or back buttons, which is actually 4, because I am going to throw these additional bumpers into the rear button section as they are additional inputs, which are remappable on the fly and also in the software. Although one super weird limitation with that is that whenever you launch the software suite after creating custom profiles on the fly or rebinding buttons, turning on turbo functionality, stuff like that, next time you launch the app, it is going to overwrite with an unnamed configuration. So basically just a new profile. As for the rear buttons or back paddles, which there's only 2 of, but technically I'm gonna count these 2 bumpers as an additional 2 inputs. You can remap them on the fly. They're gonna be called the M1 through M4 buttons. That's what a lot of controller companies call their additional inputs. You are going to hold this profile swap button in combination with M1 through 4, any of them. So I'm gonna use these 2 together. Bam. You'll get a pretty aggressive vibration in the controller, and then this red LED light will become illuminated to let you know you are in remapping mode. Now press whatever D-pad, face button, clicking down stick. Oop, it exited remapping mode because I wasn't quick enough. Let's try that again. So bam, click down this right stick. Vibrates again to let me know it was a successful bind, and you can map both of the thumbsticks, L3 and R3, to the rear buttons, which is a question I get frequently. So we'll just go ahead and rattle off the other bindings real quick. Bam, pretty quick. As far as the ergonomics, the rears are not phenomenal because they have a bit of a weird angle here, which I think is more of a problem because of this additional block, this control module for the 3.5mm jack, but they're just not in a very good position where I want to naturally rest my hand. Sometimes I can't actuate them, and whenever I do, it's just with the meat of my middle finger here. As for the bumpers though, I really do like the placement of them, even more so than the additional bumpers on the Razer controllers, and they're a little bit quieter than those as well. The rear buttons are mechanical, tactile, clicky, which I do like, but they're a little bit louder than I'd like. Nowhere on the level of Aim's 12-gauge shotguns. Those are loud. Big old fat fan of these top bumpers though. Any additional inputs on the top, I really do love. These are great for binding to the D-pads, maybe swapping through weapons, or pulling out a med kit real quick in Apex Legends. Yeah, the kiss was for the top bumpers, not for the rear buttons here. I'm gonna go ahead and give the entire suite, rear buttons, these top bumpers here, a 7 out of 10. I like the fact you can rebind very quickly, and I do like these top bumpers.
To get the software suite, which is called Elite, not to be confused with the Microsoft Elite, but the BigBigWon Elite, the easiest way to get to downloads is to click on support, click on your model of controller, which isn't the Chocobo over here for you Final Fantasy fans, but it's the Rainbow 2 Pro. Really cool looking landing page. They definitely put some attention, time, and detail into their website, being visually appealing. My God, I'm lost in the sauce just browsing. But over here in this top tab, you are going to click on app and you are going to have the option to download, but guess what? It's not for PC.
No, God, please, no!
It's a phone application. You can see that devilish red glow on my face right now. As I tell you what I'm about to tell you, I've had my share of doing walkthroughs or tutorials of cell phone applications. I'm done cluttering up my home screen on the old cellular device. I will gladly install software suites aplenty. Let me close the screen. It's making me look like a Satan's bunghole over here. I will gladly give you walkthroughs or tours of software suites on Mac or PC, Windows, but I'm kind of done installing shit on my phone. Controller phone application, with the exception of one popping up on screen here. This review here recently where I was like, wow, this phone application is actually pretty decent. I wish there were other options, but the phone app's good. They're always garbage if not spyware. No reason for not installing the BigBigWon Elite app. I'm sorry. Getting our first pull an X input test to get the stock input lag or delay, and you are going to see a very fast completing test because the PC received those samples quite quickly. We are at 1000 hertz stock polling rate, which you love to see. I haven't done any off-screen overclocking trickery, which is actually impossible with this controller because it is polling rate locked at the board. Just jumping ahead to the next section there with overclocking. We're going to all mingle it into one section here. It is polling rate locked at the board, but luckily it is a very healthy 1000 hertz polling rate. For under 1 millisecond of input lag or delay, at least reflected in X input test, I will be getting one of those GPDL Arduino testing machines. Actually attach leads to the nipples of the controllers on the PCB and test it that way. But this has been a tried and true method for years for a reason. This is I have a whole video on it on good old X input test over here. We do have 3 outliers, which are going to be 3 very large or small numbers that don't agree with the rest of its comrades, usually right there at the top. Yeah, there's one of them. We'll run a couple more tests for good measure, shall we? Holy cannoli. Lightning fast. Lickety split. Very consistent as well. Minimum, maximum close together. Jitter, low. Love to see all this. How about the dongle? It was very quick to just swap from being wired or tethered to being connected with the dongle, which is around 4 milliseconds of input lag or delay, it appears to be. Ooh, yeah, a little bit higher there, but that's probably because of those 2 outliers. I'm seeing about 4 millisecond of input lag or delay, which is not great. I'm watching it with the eyes of an eagle right now, swooping down like a hawk from the plains with my talons out. Okay, there we go. Yeah, around 4 to 5 milliseconds of input lag or delay. Not the most consistent. So when using the dongle, you're getting a 250 hertz polling rate, which is going to get you around 4 milliseconds of input lag or delay, but really it's closer to 5 because you have these little sputters in here, which are not great for consistency, not great for peak speeds either. That's unfortunate, and because of that, if you're going to use this controller, I would recommend skipping over to Bluetooth and the dongle and just going wired with a USB-C cable. Connect via Bluetooth, you're going to hold down the home button and B together for 3 seconds until the home button turns green. Yeah, there's your switch input. Green is your X input, which is also recommended for connecting via Bluetooth. That's as per the instruction manual over here, over my shoulder. Hopefully you can see it. Should be in Bluetooth discoverable mode now. All the stars align. Another thing to note, you cannot put this controller into Bluetooth discoverable mode while you are tethered by the cable or while you have the dongle plugged in. So you might forget, oh, I got the dongle plugged in the back of my tower. You try and put this thing into Bluetooth mode, wondering why it won't. You gotta unplug your dongle. So unfortunately, none of these modes of connectivity for Bluetooth will work. It's unfortunate because I did want to give you the results for Bluetooth. As for converter or adapter support, the dongle is definitely your best friend because in none of the actual Bluetooth discoverable modes, the Android Bluetooth mode, Switch, or the PC mode, which is also, they're all the same Bluetooth chip. It's not like you're getting any different speeds or anything like that. None of those would connect to any of my converters, adapters, dongles, etc. Not the 8-bit Do Goku or the Brook adapter, Ghibli Biblis or the Cronus Zen or any of that. But luckily, by plugging the dongle into that USB port in the back of the Brook Accessories XE2 for PlayStation or XB2 for Xbox, it would connect via that dongle, which as we tested on X Input Tester, does give you around 4 milliseconds of input lag or delay. So that's a very valid way of playing on both those consoles. Keep in mind on the PS5, you cannot play PS5 games, only 4, and navigate the console. I want to take a quick look at their model lineup because they do have a good shitload of controllers. They have the Elite S, which I reviewed about 2.5 years ago, maybe longer. Then you've got the Rainbow 2 Pro, which we're reviewing here today. And then their flagship beast, the SE over here, which I'd like to get my hands on eventually because I think it looks kind of cool. As for the pros, cons, and verdict, let's start with the cons, shortcomings, or limitations because there are a few. Not a huge fan of pretty much any of the components, to be honest. The D-pad, the face buttons, the bumpers, part by part, component by component, not the most impressive gamepad. Even in the price point, this is a budget or entry-level gamepad, but that is a price point that is littered, at least on the Switch and Xbox side of the house. PlayStation, third-party, aftermarket, pro controllers, premium controllers, whatever the hell you want to call them, don't really start until the 100 and there's a couple of shitters in there. But back onto the cons though, there's no included thumbstick cap option. You wouldn't really expect that in this price point. That little control module doesn't feel the best. It actually throws off the ergonomics of the controller and makes it uncomfortable to hold, having that control block there because it cocks your hands out at a weird angle and also cramps these 3 fingers together. The biggest con here is the comfort. It's not a very comfortable controller. Also, the rear buttons are not phenomenal. They're a little louder than I'd like. They're a little bit smaller and lower and not positioned well. The trigger stops only cut out about 70% of your pull. The software is only available via the flavor of a cell phone application, but it is on both the Android and iOS platforms. Yes, it'd be great if it was on PC as well. The biggest con here and why I just simply can't recommend this controller is that there's so many good to great entry budget level controllers for the Switch and Xbox platforms that now have Hall effect thumbstick modules that are much less likely to develop stick drift over time than potentiometer thumbstick modules. And these controllers have better features. They can do more shit, for lack of a better word. And the face buttons feel better, the thumbsticks. But this controller does do some things really well, and I'm going to get to it right now. The polling rate, 1000 hertz, it's lickety split. Now, I don't have the GDPL tester unit yet with an Arduino single board computer in there. Hey, it looks good on the X input side of the house. Thumbsticks feel great. They feel phenomenal, and even though they're not Hall effect joints, they're really high quality potentiometers, and the caps feel great. Anti-friction rings in there. Cosmetically, this is a gorgeous looking controller. I mentioned it was kind of like the T4 Khaled, but a little bit more handsome. It's got that smoked faceplate. RGB glows through it in a nice way, which I forgot to mention earlier. You can actually dim or disable and swap modes on the fly by holding down the function button. So if you don't want to install the phone app, like I'm not going to, I can still turn off the lights. The fact this has a 3.5mm headphone jack is pretty damn nice. So the V for verdict, I just can't recommend this controller because there are so many better competitors out there that have better feature sets, better components, magnetic Hall effect thumbstick modules in the same price point. So unfortunately, I can't recommend this controller, but it is linked in the description below if you want to check it out. Maybe something I said about it tickled your gamer nether regions and you're like, damn, that's the controller for me. It is down there in the description below. Comment section, tear it up with some controller convos and whatnot, and I will see you stallions and stallionettes tomorrow. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers, so this information will reach and assist them as well. Much like the back of the TV, I've got plugs for all of my socials down there in the description below. And your wallet will greatly thank you if you check the description because there are exclusive discounts on a ton of products, including controllers, KontrolFreeks, keyboards, mouse pads, clothes, and energy drinks. And keep in mind that you, the viewer, keep this channel running. The more stallions and stallionettes trotting around the stable, the better. So mollywop that subscribe button like it owes you money, and we'll have the same amount of fun tomorrow.